Good morning, everyone. And Jonathan, thank you very much. And let me just thank Jonathan and all the members of the annual planning committee to bring us today. And it's a years-long effort to put together the program. And so I'm especially appreciative of that effort. So as Jonathan said, our meeting today marks the 10th anniversary of our existence. And for all of you who were here for that first meeting, and for some of you who maybe this is your first meeting, I'm enormously proud to have the opportunity to celebrate a decade of accomplishment. So we're going to, the theme of my presentation will be, we're going to look back and we're going to look forward to our first decade. I have to say it's a great privilege to welcome all of you to be here, our physician members, our administrators, industry sponsors, and this meeting doesn't occur without that collective support. So as Churchill said, the farther backward you can look, the farther forward you can see. You can't really have a good presentation without a good Churchillian quote, so I like to throw this in there. So I'm going to take about 10 minutes to go over 10 years of accomplishment. I apologize to many of my colleagues who are here, many of the board members, many of the committee members, if I don't give due justice to all of your hard work and all of your efforts in our accomplishments. So what you'll see here is an evolving timeline, and started back in 2008, and the Articles of Incorporation were filed by Gary Kirsch and Bill Monig and Earl Walls. And without that initial pioneering initiation, we wouldn't be here. When we began our first LUGPA, a lot of it really evolved thanks to the organic growth from a meeting that occurred with sponsorship from TAP Pharmaceuticals, where a lot of large at the time, if you were close to 10, you were considered pretty large. We would get together and we would talk about how can we allow our practices to be more integrative, provide better services, and sustain our models of care in a very effective way. Excellence of care and excellence of business administration. And we had 67 member groups, and as everyone knows, it's the member group that is the member of LUGPA. Now, as you'll see, we're now close to 150 member groups, and we have close to 2,400 members. In April of that year, in 2009, we decided that we would go from a membership quota of 10 and allow for an associate members to come in you had a membership of physicians of between 5 and 10. In December of 2009, we estimated little north of 90% of all large urology groups were identified and qualified as member groups of LUGPA. We had a symposium, which was a big deal for us in 2010 at the AUA. The AUA recognized the importance of what we were trying to accomplish, and that we were really striving to ultimately preserve and advance the independent practice of urology, which is our mission statement, and I'll repeat it multiple times throughout my presentation. But back then, that was really the organic value of what we were trying to do and why we were decidedly unique from other urologic associations. I think this is an important point. In June of 2010, we started recognizing a little bit after a year or so of being an association that we had to get our voices heard with our representatives on the Hill, in Congress, in Washington, D.C. And, one of the things that I've been so awed to be by is the collectiveness of this board that we've had for 10 years and the diversity of talent. And there were members of that board who understood the importance of health policy advocacy and political affairs awareness and the importance of raising revenue so that we could have a seat at the table, the proverbial seat at the table. So in June of 2010, we raised a little over close to $280,000 in political contributions. Focus on that number for what I'm going to show you in a few slides forward. Then in 2011, we had our first CME course, and as Jonathan said, we had our 8th CME course yesterday on disruptive technologies. The board recognized that there were certain initiatives that other associations were not seeing as necessarily germane to the independent practice of urology. And one of them, in particularly, was the notion that community-based urologists who had the right dedication and the right infrastructure could provide geo-oncology systemic therapy. And there was certainly some initial pushback at the time, and as it related to the explosion and the rapid development of approved therapies in advanced prostate cancer. And LUGPA, assuredly, we led that path. And I think that'll probably historically get lost because now everybody takes credit for being part of that. And that includes AUA and SUO and various organizations. But it was LUGPA who said urologists can give systemic therapy and urologists could have advanced prostate cancer clinics. And it's been LUGPA who's continued in that path as it relates to bladder cancer and kidney cancer. So I have to really be so proud of the board for all those years that supported these initiatives in contradistinction to others who didn't see that that was an important aspect of urologic care. And then the Health Policy Committee, and we're going to have a health policy session later this afternoon, which is going to have some opportunity for question and answers. But the Health Policy Committee has, I think the best expression I heard from John McManus, who said to me, well, we really punch above our weight. And we really do. The accomplishments of the Health Policy Committee, thanks to Deepak Kapoor and now the committee members who were on it, Mara Holton, Mike Fabrizio, Alaku, as well as the Political Affairs Committee that has been championed by Gary Kirsch, and he's got so many folks on there, and he's going to have time to let you know all the work that they've put in. If not for their hard work and effort, we couldn't be punching above our weight. And of course, all of the member practices here who have supported that effort by going to Washington and furthering with political contribution. That is absolutely essential to our success and our next decade of success. So just a few of the things here. We weighed in heavily on the highly controversial USPSTF notion that we basically should not be screening for prostate cancer. And we were vociferous in getting our message across on the Hill, as well as to the entire House of Urology and House of Medicine. And one of those efforts culminated in our LUGPA support, and again, really with tremendous effort from our consultants on the Hill. And I want to thank them. We'll take that moment now. John McManus, Tracy Spicer, and Howard Rubin, who've really, because of their expertise, in addition to the work of the health policy team and political affairs, and all of you who've attended fly-ins, we really have the ear of all of the key people, both on the Democrat and the Republican side, who recognize that LUGPA takes all of these legislative measures quite seriously. And one of them in particular was this notion around how the USPSTF would come up with their recommendations. So we pushed very hard for H.R. 5998, which is the USPSTF Transparency and Accountability Act, 2012. And so I think I've also told you about these other extensive efforts, but it's absolutely foundational that we maintain the in-office ancillary service exemption, the IOASC, which allows us to have integrative care, multidisciplinary care, care proximal to our clinics, proximal to our patients, and quite affordable care. And it goes without saying that we want to do this in a way that is optimizing care and with excellent outcomes, or what oftentimes we talk about value, which is outcome divided by cost. And that has been, a core mission to our health policy. In June of 2013, we embarked upon a benchmarking and understanding the data within practice management that could be of vital use to our administrators and our physician leaders to see how we were doing internally as a practice and benchmarked against other LUGPA member practices. And that has been resoundingly successful for many of us, but we weren't satisfied as a board. And so you'll hear more about this, but what we're doing now in 2019 is we have an initiative to make that even better for you because we recognize the importance of benchmarking data. In August of 2013, we responded to the GAO report on self-referral for radiation therapy services. And I think I'll just essentially say throughout the decade, we've had to get our data, because data speaks. Data is relevant. Data, when well interpreted, allows for comprehension. And again, thanks to our benchmarking and our health policy committee, we were able to push back on sometimes spurious articles that would come out from other organizations, oftentimes organizations that had their own self-interest but wanted to denigrate the high quality of work that we were doing. And so that was very important and continues to be an important effort of our health policy agenda. In February of 2014, we embarked upon our first strategic plan, a formalized plan of what it was that we as an organization had accomplished and what we needed to accomplish to maintain relevancy. In I skipped the October, is when we, and this is very important, we established a formal relationship with Reviews in Urology as LUGPA's official publication. And that has been a really tremendous collaborative effort with Reviews in Urology, giving us an EPUB level manuscript for us to oftentimes get not only basic science therapeutic advancements from our own members, but also our academic colleagues, and have that published. In June of 2014, we received, through the efforts of the LUGPA board, our first unrestricted grant for $376,000 from Genomic Health, which allowed us to look at our active surveillance rates. And again, oftentimes we would be hearing that the people in the community, specifically urologists in the community, were overdiagnosing and overutilizing services. And you'll hear later today from Jeremy Shelton the work that we've done, the publications that we've done, and I think you'll be enormously proud. You heard part of it last year, but we couldn't have done that without the unrestricted and remarkably generous support of Genomic Health. In March of 2015, we worked with bipartisan support with Congressman Blackburn and Rush and 25 other significant bipartisan co-sponsors to introduce the USPSTF Transparency Act and Accountability Act. And I can tell you that, and you'll just, I guess, have to take my word on it, of multiple member organizations, our consultants, our team was lead on this act. In August of 2015, we revised our membership and said we recognize that things are changing and we needed to find a home and an avenue for groups that had less than 5 to become part of LUGPA. And these kind of moments of size, demographic shifts took a lot of discussion and a lot of consideration. And we're happy to now expand LUGPA membership to essentially all urologists who are practicing independently within the United States. So then we've hired our first full-time CEO in 2015, and we've now expanded our full-time administrative team to 4 members. And so for the first several years, this was all completely done on a volunteer basis and also with the help of wiser management. And now we have a full-time administrative team, which I would strongly encourage everyone who's a member to get to know. And that's led by our CEO, Celeste Kirshner. We've had and submitted very successfully comments on Medicare outpatient prospective payment systems. And one of the first ones that we did was we helped in a 9% increase in payment. And a large part of this was because of the hard work and the effort at showing the data that demonstrated that we were at worst cost neutral and oftentimes cost beneficial to CMS. In the end of 2015, we were now up to 125 group members. We sent comments that were to the Hill on Stark Law modernization, and we'll talk more today about the Medicare Modernization Act, which is vitally important to the ability of LUGPA member groups to work within the rules of MACRA. We began LUGPA regional meetings in the spring. Since 2016, we have 3 regional meetings. I'll show you some more about this year's meetings, but we expanded beyond the annual meeting. And that's been an enormous success. Smaller groups, we typically get somewhere between 75 and 100 folks to attend, and we try to make it a little bit more user-friendly geographically. In September of 2016, we began Prostate Cancer Academy in conjunction with Herb Lepore, Reviews in Urology, and that has been a resounding success. What we do is we have industry support, which allows us to bring 50 residents and fellows, mostly urological, but some medical oncology and radiation oncology, along with 50 LUGPA members. Typically, we're looking for folks who've been in practice less than 15 years, but we make exceptions. The main thing is trying to get younger trained physicians with our membership to understand what's cutting edge in prostate cancer. And we're enormously proud of the success of that initiative. We had our 4th Prostate Cancer Academy in Los Angeles just a few weeks ago. We then provided additional comments to USPSTF, and we have had numerous meetings with Energy and Commerce and Ways and Means. You'll see, and I don't have a slide on here, and I apologize to Gary Kirsch. Gary Kirsch testified this year to Ways and Means on behalf of LUGPA. Which was testimony to the weight that we have brought to Washington, thanks to our entire health policy team, but really also to Gary Kirsch and again Deepak Kapoor for all of their hard work and their sacrifice of their time away from their practices. Just like all of you who've done the fly-ins, just like all of you who've been committee members, it's an enormous sacrifice of your time. It affects your RVUs. It affects things that typically your partners who may not be here may fail to appreciate. I appreciate it. I hope you do, the sacrifice of time and the commitment that it takes to get these things accomplished. So for 2017 and 18, the last couple of years, we formalized our mission statement, which is to preserve and advance the independent practice of urology. And this is very, very important. I can't overstate this. And we have deployed our resources, as I've already said, on unique health policy insights, benchmarking both business aspects, clinical aspects, administrative support. And I'll talk to you in a minute about what we're doing to sustain the future of the next decade, and that would be in leadership development. Our priorities have been from advocacy and health policy to be recognized as the leader in advocacy and health policy for the independent practice of urology. I've heard this said, from our health policy experts on the Hill, that we basically are leading it in numerous, in fact, maybe for all of the specialties of medicine. What we've accomplished, or what our teams have accomplished and what you have accomplished, should not be underestimated. We're very committed to value-based care, and that's part of the ongoing theme of the MACRA legislation. And so I'll mention briefly a little later on, I think with Gary, we'll talk more about all of the hard work that's been done in terms of APM development. And then we developed a program of young urologist engagement, and we described it initially as Young LUGPA. I'll talk more about that. We changed the name from Young LUGPA, and we wanted to be a leading organization providing education on the advantages for newly trained residents and fellows and understanding what it would be to be in a career in a community urology practice. And so thanks to my dear friend Susan Rodriguez, she said, you know, I said to her, we were talking one day, and I said, you know, I don't know that I like this Young LUGPA name. And she just said, well, what about LUGPA Forward? And I had for me, it was a eureka moment. I brought it back to the board, the Young LUGPA board, and they all agreed. And so we've changed the name to LUGPA Forward. We'll talk more about that. Other strategic priorities for us are to be recognized in the leader in education, specifically for community urologists. And I mentioned the GU Oncology Clinics of Excellence. We heard presentations yesterday in our CME program of the importance of OAB and continence centers of excellence. There are opportunities for male health centers of excellence. And we continue to focus that educational effort and be innovative. As Jonathan said, that's a big part of the theme of all of our meetings, is to be innovative so we can stay vibrant and vital in the independent practice of urology. Benchmarking, we will not have a full report this year because we're transitioning, and we will have a astoundingly, is my hope, better report for you in 2019 because we recognize the importance of that data. As it relates to physician and administrative leadership development, it should be very clear that we're a unique organization in that we value so highly our non-physician leadership. And what I've come to recognize is that the groups that are thriving, the groups that are not feeling threatened, the groups that are secure in what they're doing are the groups that not only have physician leadership, but assuredly have non-physician, strong, articulate administrator leadership. And we have had workshops. We concluded one yesterday, which I heard was resoundingly successful. And we'll continue to do those types of things in order to preserve and advance the independent practice of urology. We want to be the preferred membership organization for independent groups, clearly. And we, as a board, it's very important that we ensure financial stability with very strong fiduciary oversight. And so we've instituted in these last 2 years numerous checks and balances to make sure that we were stewards not only of the sponsorship that we receive from industry, but clearly the dues that we receive from you. I will make a note that we have had the same dues structures over the last decade, and we haven't raised dues, which is somewhat remarkable. But it is something that we will be discussing. We want to have the organizational capacity required to achieve our mission goals, which means fiduciary oversight and the ability to continue to make sure we have a positive balance and potentially have even more full-time employees and or more initiatives to help our membership and create value. So in 2017, we began, thanks to the leadership of Evan Goldfisher, the Practice Management for Urology Groups, and that book was published, and there's consideration for a second book. And then we also started our first Bladder Cancer Academy. We started Bladder Cancer Academy when there was only one immuno-oncologic approved in all of uro-oncology care. There's now 5. And we also had a CME program in 2016 before anybody did, saying, get ready, be aware, this is going to change how you treat bladder cancer and then ultimately kidney cancer. So once again, LUGPA has been leading. We also began the LUGPA Platform Q Crossfire live web-based series, sort of a lunch and learn, but live, as well as having archival information. And that was a collaboration that LUGPA does with Platform Q. And that our first project was developing an effective advanced prostate cancer clinic. In October, after comments by LUGPA and a very large physician coalition, CMS officially withdrew its controversial proposed ruling relating to the Medicare Part B drug payment model. Again, another example of where LUGPA focused its efforts and energies and its resources to accomplish benefit for membership economic model. In November of 2017, with congressional support through much of our efforts, we helped introduce a bipartisan bicameral bills to reform Stark, essentially so that we could legally and more effectively participate in APM models. In 2018, at the beginning of last year, we had the first urology-specific electronic clinical quality measures that CMS accepted, thanks to LUGPA. No other urology association had introduced any. And we then also had our first winter meeting with Grand Rounds in Urology. This is the International Prostate Cancer Update meeting. It was its 27th meeting, and our first time that it was co-sponsored with LUGPA. We had 8 LUGPA speakers talking about all sorts of topics that would be important to our membership. Our monthly newsletter was launched, as well as LUGPA News Stream, and we also this year approved significant resources to further revamp our website. Ironically, I've had so many people come up to me and say, "Oh, the website's great. We're gonna make it better." And let me take a moment to thank David Ellis and the Communications Committee. A daunting task to review and put forward all things to have communication of up-to-date information for our LUGPA members. If you're not reading that, and then please do, and give us your feedback. And I thank that committee for a tremendous effort. So I mentioned many, many years ago, we had about a $280,000 lift in political affairs. We're over $1 million in 2017 and 2018 in that particular political cycle. That's all thanks to LUGPA member practices and the hard work of the Political Affairs Committee, led by Gary Kirsch. So that's just a tremendous accomplishment. No other organization in urology comes remotely close to that accomplishment. So the evolution of our priorities have been to advocate for the sustained growth of LUGPA products and services. We continue to try to be innovative. Are we successful in everything? No. We want your feedback. We want your creativity and ideas. There are ongoing challenges and competition from other associations that we recognize we need to differentiate ourselves and understand, we're not going away. There's no stock in LUGPA. We're here for you for the long term. But having competitive forces makes us have to be better ourselves. So we're constantly thinking about how we can expand the membership in an appropriate manner, and our financial stability and fiduciary oversight, oftentimes with the help of our administrative board members and our physician leadership, has put us in exceptional financial stability, and we'll go over that at the business meeting later today. So I mentioned LUGPA Forward. I think we on the board are remarkably proud of doing this. In a short period of time, thanks to the chairmanship of Jason Haffron, when I asked him to be the chair, and he accepted within literally a nanosecond. He understood the importance of this, and his entire committee have been really tremendous. We have over 400 LUGPA members who have been identified as LUGPA Forward. And this is to recognize that the demographic and the age and the generation, it's changing in urology. This is in all healthcare. as the baby boomers advance out and Gen X's and millennials and Gen Z's come into place. And that's a good thing. And so I think that the unique perspectives of LUGPA Forward will continue to carry LUGPA, the organization, to excellence in the next decade. When we began 10 years ago, we had 3 committees. We had 11 specific, unique individuals serving. Let's fast forward 10 years later. We now have 18 committees. We have 45 unique individuals serving. I'd like to see 90 people serving, not in another 10 years, but sooner than that. The more participation we have, the better we are as an organization. The collective body of talent within this room, let alone the entire country, that could help and preserve the independent practice of urology and avoid us from becoming commoditized is very important. So in terms of board development, we formalized the board job description. And then something that really took up a lot of time this year was improving our conflict of interest policies. We created a task force. You know, there's a lot of entrepreneurial spirit in this country, and it certainly doesn't escape organizations in healthcare, and LUGPA's not exempt. And I want to thank Eben Goldfisher and Alan Winkler and David Shakin for putting in a lot of effort. We got great support from legal counsel here in Chicago, Paul Gettert, to help us understand how we would be contemporaneous and up-to-date in our conflict of interest policy. We also unanimously adapted a partnership in principle with industry that will be on our website, which clarifies and codifies the transparency that we want with our industry partners. And we also are now doing regular board self-evaluation. So I've got 2 quotes from 2 famous Italian men. Here's the first one. It had long since come to my attention that people of accomplishment rarely sat back and let things happen to them. They went out and happened to things. And when I look at the founding board members of this organization and the additional successive board members, this is sort of the character that I'm so proud of to have been part of. I'll just quickly review again the political advocacy to prevent attacks on the integrated medicine in the independent setting. And make no mistake, there are attacks. Oftentimes they come from legislators, sometimes they come from other organizations, and we have to stave off that internecine warfare. And we've mentioned these. I'm just going to outline them here. Again, I apologize. I wish I had more time. But you can see these things that are vitally important to us as an organization and as a urologist in the community. The IOASC, independent practice's ability to work collectively within the macro boundaries. And so this has been an enormous charge of our effort. The USPSTF, we weighed in, like I said, vociferously is not an understatement, and we've now seen that change from a D to a C. And then site neutrality, which you've probably been getting letters on, and you'll hear more about that, hopefully, if not later today at our health policy session, that we've been pushing back on to just make it a level playing field. So if we're doing the same work as someone else, but they happen to be in a large domiciled hospital system, then we're not getting 50% for the same efforts performed. And obviously, and importantly, appropriate reimbursement for all of the different things that we do. In terms of the in-office dispensary, there's a lot of frothiness recently from the current administration regarding drug reimbursement, and we are following that very, very, very carefully. Here's the Medicare Coordination Improvement Act of 2017, and the short bullets that you see here was to allow our practices to participate in APMs by exempting the value and volume from fair market value standards, which they were allowing for hospital-based systems and ACOs, and we just wanted, again, to have a fair seat at the table to do that. And we are the only urologic organization that's put forward an APM since the macro legislation has been instituted. So providing these resources, I mentioned the Genomic Health Grant. Again, Jeremy Shelton will be up here to really go into some of the really interesting data that's come forward with that. But I'm proud of the fact that Jeremy presented at AUA 2015. Note the little sub-bullet. It was a media day selection by the AUA of over 2,000 abstracts. 44 were selected, and one of them was the work that we did on benchmarking thanks to the grant we received from Genomic Health. He presented, again, a 3-year active surveillance showing that urology groups do not overutilize services, do not overdiagnose. And so this was an important research protocol. These manuscripts are in process and have been submitted to Journal of Urology, and we have a 3rd manuscript that's in preparation. So that work of that grant is really bearing fruit, and it's basically and continues to be noticed as a LUGPA initiative. And that brings me to the Tolmar Prostate Cancer Grant. Thanks to the folks at Tolmar and Susan Rodriguez, we submitted for an unrestricted grant on education in prostate cancer, and we received a $500,000 grant this year from Tolmar. And what we're doing is it's completely unrestricted, and we are doing 2 separate projects. One is optimizing the role of androgen deprivation therapy in prostate cancer, and the other project is recommendations and pathways, not guidelines. We're not going to battle with guidelines. We enjoy looking at NCCN and AUA guidelines, but we want to have more salient, practical recommendations and pathways for CRPC management. And so each project will have 2 academic urology key opinion leaders, 2 academic medical oncology key opinion leaders, and 8 LUGPA key opinion leaders for each project. So we're incredibly appreciative of that grant. This is just a list of the clinical educational advancements that we've accomplished, again, in tandem to what we've done on the health policy level as well. I'll talk a little bit more. Now, LUGPA on-site, you have it in your program handouts, and really pleased to announce that Myriad Genetics will be, spearheading this. We're talking to several key bladder and kidney cancer and prostate cancer companies as well. But in addition to an emphasis on that support, this will be an opportunity for LUGPA administrative team, LUGPA experts, and the topics of hereditary risk of prostate cancer, bladder cancer services, particularly systemic therapies, possibly kidney cancer therapies as well, to come to your practice and talk to the key people in your practice who want to do this, who are dedicated to doing the excellence of cancer care, and also review some of the other important topics that keep our administrators and physician leadership up at night, inclusive of culture, decision-making, other service lines, compensation, and leadership development. So please contact LUGPA on-site, contact Celeste Kirshner. We're really excited about having that program rolled out very successfully this year. This is just a med reviews. This is a picture. There's Mark Dolera and Herb Lepore. This is from this year's Los Angeles meeting. But prostate and bladder cancer academies have been really an enjoyable event for the LUGPA leadership. It gives us a great opportunity to work with residents and fellows and our members who really want to take GU oncology care to the next level. We have our 3rd bladder cancer meeting in February 28th to March 2nd in St. Louis this year, and next year is September 19th to the 21st in Los Angeles. Urocare Live, we initiated this as well, and this is a series of crossfire programs where you can just click on at typically noontime or maybe depending upon your time zone and actually listen live to discussions on various controversial or interesting or new topics in therapeutics and also in the topics that are important to business and administrative issues. And we've done programs on physician ownership, practice ownership. We'll do many more practices. I want to thank Earl Walls for helping to champion that. We have a new program coming out this year, Enhancing Urology Care for Patients with Prostate Cancer, an educational series with debates, cases, perspectives, and interactive lectures. We try to coordinate it with as many of our LUGPA leadership, which means you, everyone in the audience, as well as the right academic voices to give a real value add. So you can get these. If you can't watch it live, you can download them. You can get all the information on our LUGPA website. As I mentioned earlier, we had our first winter meeting co-sponsored with IPCU. We'll have a second meeting this year. It's January 24th through the 27th in Beaver Creek. And it's really a great opportunity to network and dialogue with your LUGPA colleagues as well as your academic colleagues in prostate. And actually, there's a day on bladder cancer as well. And I want to thank Dave Crawford for allowing us and wanting us, actually. Dave's been a huge champion of the LUGPA initiatives. Here's our regional meetings this year. Hopefully, many of your colleagues who aren't here will come to these meetings. We're going to be in New Orleans in March. We'll be in St. Petersburg, Florida in April, and in San Diego in the end of June, or early June. We're potentially hoping to initiate a new program called Rising Chief Residents Meeting. And this is a program goes back to many of you who might remember, who are old enough, the old Norwich-Eaton programs. AUA does some programming like this, but I think our notion here is to do a full day program or 2/3 of a day programming, possibly holding it around the June regional meeting and bringing in rising chief residents and a very fair and balanced panel of what it means to come into and have a career in independent practice, and as well as going into being an employed physician in an academic or a non-academic environment. So we're working hard on that, and we'll stay tuned. The business of urology, I mentioned our administrators and the importance that they bring to understanding when they're focusing on the operational value and the bottom line to doing these new service lines. And we have archived on-demand materials. We've had our regular administrator workshops, and that's been something that I think has been exceptionally unique to LUGPA. So the second Italian quote, I went from Da Vinci to Lombardi. The achievements of an organization are the results of the combined effort of each individual. And so I really, it really is some of the secret sauce behind LUGPA, that we have very strong administrative leaders and very strong physician leaders. And again, we really try to embrace more and more involvement from everyone who's a member. Here's the bench, the practice management book. There's copies of it upstairs, and there's consideration for another volume. Benchmarking, I told you about. We're under evaluation and review, but I can say with 100% confidence that the board is committed to doing something that will be dramatically better from what you've already seen, so please stay tuned for that. Again, our industry partners, we've embraced our industry partnership. We want their feedback as to what their needs are and how their needs could meet our needs, and done so in a compliant way, done so in a way that passes all aspects of transparency and optimization to patient care. And here are our platinum sponsors, Astellas, Pfizer, Genomic Health, Myriad, Janssen, Merck, and Tolmar. They've been with us. This isn't their first time, and I can't thank them enough for their platinum sponsorship. Our gold member sponsors are also equally to the task of being involved in our organization. Last night, Dendrion sponsored the exhibit hall reception. I felt badly. We didn't really have the best acoustics for introducing them, but people were having a really good time. But they've been an exceptional sponsor for us, and they've made it very clear and publicly that the large urology groups are pivotal to their model. And I'm working really hard on new companies such as Genentech, Roche, a long-standing relationship that we've had with Amgen. Integra Connect, I think this is the 4th year they've been gold-level sponsors. Urogen, a new company here, which has really exciting new information coming out on an unmet need in upper tract, low-grade disease, urothelial cell cancer. It's great to see Isalis Ferring Oncology, all of these companies, Clovis Oncology, arguably maybe the first company possibly to have a new PARP inhibitor in the market. So I apologize if I'm not saying something about all of them. I could. It's great because we're in this together. It's a lot of teamwork and dedication to get this 10 years successfully accomplished. I can't say it enough thanks to the board. I've been really, really fortunate to have a wonderful, talented, dedicated, communicative board for the last 2 years. And frankly, the boards for the last 10 years have been exceptional. The committees and their committee chairmen, the LUGPA administrative team, with our CEO, Celeste Kirshner, done a tremendous job. Our health policy consultants, John McManus, Tracy Spicer, Howard Rubin, Wiser Management, who's been with us from the get-go and does an exceptional job in putting together these meetings. Our relationship with Med Reviews, our official journal, Prostate Bladder Cancer Academy, now Platform Q, and EuroCare Live TV. These are co-sponsored with LUGPA. And then Euro Today, who is doing all the audio-visual for our meetings at no cost to us, and will get our messages out. Our advocacy supporters, we've had all the different prostate advocacy. I don't have on here PCF, which I apologize, Prostate Cancer Foundation. Their patient education materials are just truly outstanding, incredibly balanced and constantly curated, but so are the other organizations are excellent. Beacon is the only real bladder cancer advocacy network group that's out there. We're working on a lot of forward-thinking new patient educational literature and working together with Beacon on educational initiatives, CME-based, for LUGPA member practices in understanding and administering immuno-oncologic therapies. So stay tuned to that. And of course, our members in Congress and government agencies who support and understand LUGPA's mission. And clearly, nothing happens without LUGPA member practices. So it's all about commitment. That's what President Lincoln said. And I think I'm awed by the level of character and the level of integrity that I've seen in the members who get involved, and particularly the committee chairs and the board members. So I just want to close with, as my final slide, we have challenges, and we'll hear about those challenges today. And I've not really gotten too deep into the challenges, but I was, having a conversation with one of my dear friends about some of these challenges, and, what is it to be a physician, urologist? And, you can get a job. We all had jobs, right? We had a summer job. That was my first job. I worked doing janitorial services in a nursing home. Got the job through nepotism. My father was a family physician, so I thought it was great. I think I got $1.55 an hour, and I thought I was living big, but it allowed to me to, get a little bit of payment. It was a means to an end. For some folks, it's a basic necessity of life, and then you could take a job and change that into a career, which is long-term, and it's consistent, and lets you move up and down the ladder, and you get titles, and there's financial incentives and bonuses and stock and buyouts and things of that nature. And I think that's what most people do, and that's good. That's what the business of America is business. Is that what Coolidge said? But then there's this concept about, by the way, these aren't unique definitions for me, a calling. And what's a calling? So a calling is something that you genuinely care about and which you will never grow tired. And it has to be integral to your life goals. And it has to provide you with self-fulfillment. And now I'm just speaking, quite frankly, to the physicians. And I know there's a lot of challenge in front of us. There's a lot of burden upon us from many different variables. But you keep hearkening back to why you became a physician. And you can't lose the notion of the calling. So I've been really focused since Wayne Sotil came here, and he talked about the concept of wonderment. I don't know if many of you remember that presentation. I do. I love the notion of wonderment, which is the state of awed admiration or respect for something. And you're open to growth, and you want to do something significant. Well, let me just finish by saying that I genuinely feel that that's what we're trying to do for you at LUGPA. We want you to continue to feel wonderment in your career and in the field of urology. So with that, I apologize for going a little bit over. I thank you all very much.